The views and opinions expressed on the show are those of the guests or hosts, and not necessarily those of the advertisers, networks, platforms, or stations. Warning that the content of the show may not be suitable for all audiences, and that viewer discretion is advised. The show does not intend to provide medical, legal, or financial advice, and viewers or listeners should consult with a professional before making any decisions based on the information presented.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. As always, we are broadcasting from 300 feet deep in an abandoned nuclear missile silo somewhere lost in the post-apocalyptic wastelands of the Dakota Territories. And as always, I'm joined by the paranormal crime-fighting duo, Daisy and the Sundance Kid. And high above us today, circling around, there were Dakota pterodactyls. They were glowing, radioactive, and from their flight patterns, they appear to be hunting that most famous of all Dakota cryptids, the jackalope. And, well, it's been one of those crazy weeks. Attention all passengers on the Great Space Roller Coaster. There is turbulence dead ahead. Please return to your seats. Place your trays in their upright positions. Remember to be kind to your stewardess. And, as always, thank you for flying Universal Airways. That's what's going on right now in the world, guys. This is something that's been long predicted by the Webbot as far as the sheer amount of turbulence now. The assassination of Kirk did not pop up as an event in the event stream, which may indicate to us that we've hit some sort of new trajectory. So let's remember that. We are living in a strange, what appears to be ontological model of reality. That is, that there is apparently a supreme consciousness. And we're going to approach all of tonight's conversation from a mechanistic viewpoint. Let's not put any sort of emotion into it. Let's simply add certain components to our equation, extract certain components from the equation. Let's do a little math tonight. We're going to sort of talk about recapping a lot of the information that I've gone over in some of the past broadcasts, and that's because there's a lot of complexity taking place right now, and its interplay is both fascinating and really kind of crucial for people to know and to understand. If you're one of the few out there listening to our live broadcast, then just know this, that you have received an amazing cosmic message in a bottle, and you're going to be privy to information and things that are really kind of on a higher level of conversation. This is the place where you sort of have a convergence of many different information, intelligence streams coming in. And I want to take that opportunity to go ahead and present tonight's sponsor, which is the Oculus the Oculus-AI.com, which is a new service that allows you to have basically a Sherlock Holmes in your pocket. You can download the Oculus-AI.com app to your phone. Every day there is a daily briefing, an intelligence briefing presented specifically for you of a great deal of information that is curated artificial intelligence. In other words, these are intelligence briefs that are collated using artificial intelligence by people who know what questions to actually pose to it. and how to use it to uncover hidden information in the world of OSINT, which is a ever-growing world out there, the open source intelligence gathering community. This is sort of birthed out of that. If you have seen or have ever been to my website, paraintelagency.com, or if you are a current subscriber to paraintelagency.com, make sure that you go to the Oculus. And again, that's www.theoculus-ai.com, and begin your monthly subscription on that site, because paraintelagency.com is going to meld into the Oculus. So it will cease operations by December 31st of this year, and everything will be on the Oculus. All paranormal intelligence will be on the Oculus and included in those intelligence briefs for the subscribers, and it's only $5 a month, which is, it's less than a cup of coffee that you get at Starbucks. So for $5 a month, you get a daily intelligence briefing of information you had no idea was even out there in the world for you to know about. For instance, we just reported this last week that the United States Navy actually just launched a major advancement in naval warfare, and it wasn't reported by a single mainstream news station anywhere. It was only through artificial intelligence and knowing how to extract information that we were able to ascertain that we have now a 44-ton, 57-mile-per-hour over open water warship, which is completely autonomous, runs completely off of artificial intelligence, and is completely packed with cruise missiles. That's right. We have launched such a thing, and it is now out at sea. Find that somewhere else. So, but to get back to tonight's conversation, we're going to be discussing really a major event which was predicted by the WebBot. The WebBot didn't see the Kirk assassination coming, but what it did see was a huge amount of emotional release language taking place at this period of time, and that's in fact what we're seeing. It was like there was a huge building up of tension like there is before any major event, and after that event there's a huge amount of release language that can be found by the WebBot spiders that go all over the internet and look at conversations worldwide, to make a long story short. So that's going to cause repercussions in our society that most people right now can't even begin to suspect. The assassination of Kirk occurred at a crucial moment, which was already a tipping point. And what it was like the universe running up and throwing gasoline on a raging fire. And now, oh boy, things are going to get burned. I can almost guarantee you that those who see themselves on the other side of that assassination, and there are reprehensible human beings online who are celebrating somebody's murder. That's absolutely disgusting. But I can tell you that those who are on the right in this country, they're going to be coming for scalps on this one. This one, they're not going to let go. This was the tide turning in a way that the other side could never even begin to suspect. And in such a way that it's going to cause dominoes to fall in our society that most people didn't even know were there. That's going to be interesting, because what we're coming up to is a convergence of events manifesting out of the event stream. And if you've been a fan of the show or followed us for a while, you know that we follow the Webbot's view of the universe, which is the ontological view that there is the true nature of the universe is one, which is a self-revealing nature, and it does reveal itself to the living species within its material paradigm. This is all presumably caused by a supreme consciousness, and by all intents and purposes, you might as well call that God. In what form that manifests is up to any given religion on any given day to provide you with some sort of meaningful definition that can be perceived in a human way. They're all describing ultimately the same architect, which has created a material paradigm in which we find ourselves facing a very close future where we are going to be approached by an object now known as 3-Eye Atlas. And 3-Eye Atlas is doing some extremely strange things. This is going to coincide at a time when Kirk's assassination causes what, for all intents and purposes, can be described as an actual Civil War-like event that takes place in the United States that is coinciding with actual World War III breaking out in Western Europe. And that will coincide with China's invasion of Taiwan. All of these things will coincide with a death of fiat currency worldwide. The old debt system, the death of the old debt system based on a petrol fiat dollar is finally within its death throes. And in the coming very soon, immediate future, next few months, over the next couple of years, you're going to begin to see cryptocurrency overtake all of the world's currencies. This was something that the bankers have long feared. It was something that Satoshi Nakamoto, the figure that designed Bitcoin and left the white paper for us to follow, intended to happen. Cryptocurrency at its base, at Bitcoin's base, is completely uncontrollable. That doesn't mean it's going to wipe away the old system. What it means is that the old system is shape-shifting. And they are currently, right now, in the process of buying up as much cryptocurrency as they can get their hands on. I know because I both own cryptocurrency and I follow a nonstop information intelligence stream concerning the fact that there are now major, huge financial institutions, BlackRock being chief among them. And for those of you who know who BlackRock is, then you know what I'm telling you is some serious stuff. BlackRock is probably the biggest financial organism in the entire world. Some would say they are a cancer on the world. You want to know why housing remains artificially high in the United States? Because BlackRock goes in and buys up all of the houses that are for sale and turns them into rental properties. BlackRock is in control of huge percentages of people's 401k funding, and BlackRock has been accumulating Bitcoin and Ethereum like mad. Tell me that those people who run the world's largest investment institution don't know what's about to happen. Of course they do. What if I told you that the current market cap of Bitcoin is $2.2 trillion? I was arguing with people back when it was $1 that they should be buying it. Today, traded up to 117,000 a coin. The Webbot predicts a time of economic turmoil coming in which a few Satoshis, which is what they call just a micro percentage of a Bitcoin, will get you a house. Think about that. And on top of that, consider the fact that only 13% of Americans own any crypto. 13%. And it's already got a market cap of 2.2 trillion. That's just Bitcoin. You look at Ethereum's market cap. It's into the many tens and tens of billions of dollars. It's trading somewhere around $40 billion a day. A day. All of the current banking institutions are building out their platforms on Ethereum, which is basically a fork off of Bitcoin. Imagine modern day banking where you no longer have to wait through a weekend for a business transaction to take place. You no longer have the delay in your banking account. You no longer have holds on your banking account. You no longer have any sort of transaction fees, even including overseas between the biggest institutions with the largest amounts of money. Instantaneous transactions, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with no transaction fees. That's what they're building out. And it all happens on the Ethereum network, right? Well, you know, Ethereum's at like 4,500 a coin right now. The best analysts, crypto analysts out there right now have a target of 50,000 a coin in the short term. Tell me that these guys don't understand the economic apocalypse that's about to take place. Because a lot of other strange things are taking place. And a lot of those strange things actually affect the paranormal world in the aspect that it's going to cut off all of the money that they require to run their special access programs in which they're housing all of this captured alien technology. And a big part of that has to do with the silver market. People have no idea how much the silver market means to the overall economy, and they have no idea that the silver market has actually reached a point where control is beginning to slip out of their hands. There's a good reason for this. If you look at the COMEX, which is where all of this precious metal is traded, you can look at the open contracts for precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, what have you. And you can also look at how many of them are demanding physical delivery of that silver, right? Of that gold, of whatever precious metal. It's one thing to hold a contract in your hand, which is a promise for somebody to deliver that silver or that gold to you. It's another thing to already have it in your possession when the you-know-what hits the fan. Because what happens when you're just holding a contract is it never gets filled. There's a reason for that. The number of open contracts right now for precious metals on the COMEX far exceeds the amount of actual precious metal available for physical delivery. And yet, every one of those contracts are now demanding physical delivery. This is all occurring at a time when gold is making record highs. So you can see where if some of these financial experts are right and they predict that Trump is actually going to tie, they're going to introduce a 50-year treasury bond. 50 years. That's a long time. That's a long runway, right? And they're going to tie those bonds to physical delivery of gold. At the same time, they're going to reprice physical gold to $24,000 an ounce. It's currently at $3,600. When they reprice it up that high, they're going to be able to sell those bonds out on a 50-year plan for physical delivery of gold in such a way that they can erase $37 trillion in debt. That's the plan that's underway. Will they succeed? I don't know. But I do know that the Webbot predicts a time when all currencies fail and the only thing left are cryptocurrencies on the blockchain. Because, and you know, probably logically speaking, those cryptocurrencies will be tied to a basket of physical assets that hold real world value of some kind. Gold, silver, precious metals, things used in high technology production, basically, is what it comes down to. So, but all of that matters, and the silver manipulation has been going on for 45 years on the short end, right? 45 years. You can look at the chart. It's formed what's known as a cup and handle pattern over a 45-year pattern. That's the most bullish signal that you can ever see in any chart on any given asset that you can imagine. And this one's formed over a 45-year period. That is unprecedented. What that means is that there is a coiled spring about to spring. And when it goes, it's going to pop in a way that's going to cause like massive bank runs. Because what's happened is all of these banking institutions around the world have been able to artificially keep low the price of silver by derivative contracts, which allows them to basically borrow 1,000-fold over what they actually physically have in their possession and sell that out to the public. They've been doing that for 45 years. And now you have entities like Elon Musk and Tesla actually running short on silver because they can't get enough delivered to them off the COMEX. That's showing that the amount of physical silver compared to the number of contracts that will be demanding that physical silver is almost non-existent. When that happens, all of those banking derivative contracts that are based off of silver begin a cascading effect through the banking institutions. That creates a major problem with the currency, and all of this is what you're going to see coming up in the next few months to the next, really until 2027, basically. So you're talking about a long period of time. 2026 is quiet in comparison to what happens in 2027, according to the Webbot. But like I said, 3i Atlas is headed this way. And 3i Atlas, according to the Webbot, is going to be used by the powers that be here on our planet as a way of trying to control the masses. The Webbot also predicts that it's not a meteor. It appears to be intelligently controlled and artificial in origin. It even predicts that if there are aliens on board, that those aliens are dead, and that the craft is possibly just being piloted by artificial intelligence. What's even more interesting is that 3i Atlas has changed its course. It's changed its color, and it's changed its speed. You would think it would have sped up, but no, it has slowed down. And now it's headed to the other side of the sun, very close to Mars, and we'll be talking about that right after our break.
I'm Sarah, and this is my story.
I'm Ellen, and this is my story.
One night, I was at a bar.
I
was having fun with my friends.
I
had one too many drinks.
I
I got behind the wheel to go home.
I got a cab to go home.
All of a sudden, from out of nowhere, a squirrel ran across the road.
It
happened so quickly, I barely had time to react.
The cabbie barely had time to react.
I swerved.
The cab swerved.
I can't believe it. I hit a guy.
I cannot believe it. The cabbie just missed a guy.
I wish I took a cab.
Thank goodness I took a cab.
You have the choice to save a life. Don't drive buzzed. It's a decision you'll never regret. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
Shadows creep, monsters leave. In the woods, strange voices. Shadows creep in the woods, monsters leave. In the woods, bright noises. Mystical. Airwave mystical. Mystical. UFO. Alien overlord.
From ancient times to modern days, legends of creatures in sudden disarray. Hear them speak through frequencies. Alien connections.
Break it out, truth untold. Do it in cosmic mystery. Dark woods where legends breathe. Paranormal whispers, can you believe? Bigfoot strikes through the veils. Dogman howls in the midnight tale. From the static, relations pour. Portals open, dimensions roar. Truth, no disguise. Cryptid shadows creeping near. Through the static, voices clear. Dark woods where legends breathe.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey, your personal tour guide to the Twilight Zone, the minister of the sinister. And I've got a face for milk cartons and a voice for smell-o-vision. And tonight we are talking about all kinds of changes that are taking place, about to take place. A lot of that stuff is economic, and that's, part and parcel of what happens when you introduce an outside force into a bubble. The bubble often pops, and the outside force being introduced into our worldwide economic structure will be the force of new technologies, which are alien-based, which are, sort of free, cheap or free energy. Imagine, being able to manufacture anything you want on a massive scale for pennies. Things like that. Imagine that kind of intervention into a closed economy, which is all based on old types of energy sources. Imagine devices that follow a completely different kind of physics than we ever even knew existed. In other words, in the Webbot model, there are physicists that we have on the planet today that follow what's called the gritology model. That's the idea that really what's real is just the dirt, the sand, the rock, all of the debris and stuff that makes up space. And if consciousness disappeared, all that stuff would still exist, right? And then there's the simulation model, which has gained a lot of traction in recent years, and I've even discussed it in great detail on the show here. And in the simulation model, you have, basically the model where consciousness is inside of a simulation, and it's being propagated by a machine of some kind, and there's somebody behind a computer terminal watching the simulation, and we're all part of that simulation. That's it in a nutshell. And then you have the ontological model, which is what the Webbot seems to point to, which is the model that there is some sort of supreme consciousness that created this construct. And what it's looking for, what it's seeking, is something called novelty, right? It's seeking out unique experiences through a never-ending multitude of various life forms that it's never had before. And the only way to find new experiences within this materium that it's created is to increase the complexity level. So it reaches in and it turns the complexity dial up to high, right? That creates a large amount of chaos, but in that chaos, one finds opportunities and experiences that couldn't be had without it. That's currently what humanity is experiencing, and down here on the great space roller coaster that I call Earth, we're sort of experiencing that on a micro level in our daily lives, with crazy events taking place all over the world, and even in space with the approach of 3-Eye Atlas, which is an alien artifact of some kind. So all of that complexity is beginning to really show up in a way that was predicted by the Webbot many years ago, and it has reiterated over the last, so many months and few years, that the same thing, as you get closer to something in the event stream, it tends to have more detail. And you also have things that are called temporal markers, where if you have a smaller event take place, another event that it's talking about has a much higher probability of also manifesting. And that's kind of what we've been experiencing over the past summer. This has been the summer of emergence, and going into the fall, we're going to have really massive change begin to take place. At some point in early 2027, if you look at it on like a graph or a chart, you can see this. If you can see my finger, you can see this slope that goes up like this, right? And you're at 2026, 2026, 2026, 2027, way up here, right? Well, all of that is tension building, meaning that some massive event takes place in early 2027, which would be the type of emotional response if you had a point where aliens actually showed themselves to the world, right? Worldwide, absolute, undeniable acceptance by every single last living human being on the planet. That kind of emotional buildup is what it seems to predict. And what you have on the other side of that is a whole new world, a whole new existence. So you kind of have a period of time here where you can prep, you can prepare yourselves, you can do some, like I'm doing here, which is nonstop, but I'm working on the silo, guys, getting it completely ready for the winter here. We have harsh winters in the Dakotas, and there's a lot of prepping that goes into a property over the summer in order to, it's tough to get anything done when it's, 30 below outside. So all the outdoor work kind of takes place all through the summer months, and then your indoor work takes place, during the winter months, and that's kind of where I'm at. As always, it's probably a good time to mention, come by jackcareyart.com. Most of the time I am a professional artist these days, and I sell original paintings, and you can find those at jackcareyart.com if you feel like supporting the show and our efforts here. That would be fantastic. I think you'll find something that you will like for your home. Don't be one of these people that hangs up a poster. Don't hang up a poster and think it looks okay, because it doesn't. Buy an original. Buy some real art and hang it on your wall and transform your space. So, but if not from me, from another artist of some kind out there in the world. But anyway, it's interesting that 3i Atlas, and now there's a new stellar body coming through. It's referred to as Swan 25. You'll hear a lot about that. The Webbot is saying that in 2026, the powers that be, which is our government, certain forces within our government begin to use 3i Atlas. They begin to realize for real that this is an alien body of some kind, an alien craft, construct of some kind, and they begin to use that as a control mechanism over the populace through various fear factoring. They will, like any government around the world, be completely freaked out by any sort of contact between a human and an alien. They will automatically assume that human being has been compromised in some fashion, that it's altered their way of thinking or acting, etc., and that will lead to a lot of quarantining taking place. A lot of people sort of just disappearing who have been contactees, things like that. There will be a strong effort to scare the populations of the world from having any personal contact with aliens that might just say land in your field somewhere. because that's a lot of what ends up being predicted actually taking place. And along with that, you have a lot of predictions of actual alien technology making it out to the public. All of these things act like major factors working together to alter our reality construct in really unexpected ways. Now, 3i Atlas changing its trajectory, changing its color to this really crazy green glow, and changing its speed. You know, it was traveling, I think they said somewhere around 136,000 miles per minute, something like that. This thing slows down. It's coming in, slows down, then changes its pattern, its course, and now it's headed over to Mars. And last week I discussed the fact that there is quite possibly a lot of interesting evidence to show that there is quite possibly a operational Mars colony. It could be, if indications are right, that Mars colony ran into some problems, some sort of supply issues of some kind, and we don't know what state that colony currently resides in. Is it possible that the ships that Gary McKinnon, the British hackers, saw are still operational up there, and they solared the whole solar warden aspect of them having these massive ships, you know, dating back decades, and an entire cadre of military astronauts to pilot them? Is it possible that they've been able to get supplies to Mars? Yeah, it's quite possible. And it's quite possible that they were able to maybe freshen up the number of people there, provide medical, whatever, you know, whatever is needed, the logistics of running a colony. Is that possible? It's possible. Is 3i Atlas headed there because of the colony? That's an interesting possibility. We have all kinds of cameras on Mars. We have rovers and what have you, and I'm quite certain they will be positioned where they can see this approaching craft. Whether or not any of that shared with the public is anybody's guess, but I would highly doubt it. And if anything occurs between that craft and a secret colony that we have running, it's highly doubtful any of that information would make it out, right? So we also have a group of remote viewers who a few decades ago remote viewed Mars and determined that, and these were some of the CIA's original Stargate remote viewers, but they targeted Mars in ancient history, and they targeted up to present day, and they were able, to make a long story short, they were able to determine that below the surface of Mars, there are artificially intelligent robots that were left by the species that used to inhabit Mars, and that those robots were actively sending out signals, it seemed like, to somebody. Is it possible that 3i Atlas is that somebody? That's also a possibility. You know, and it's interesting to explore all these different possibilities. So, but it's also interesting that it's headed to Mars because of the ancient history of Mars. And if you've studied all of the information that I've covered in the past on this show and on my YouTube channel, which you can find out there, it's just under my name, Jack Cary, C-A-R-Y. You'll find a research video that I did that traces the step-by-step information flow, evidence flow, to show that once upon a time, many, many millions of years ago, there appears to have been another planet very near Mars. And that planet was actually occupied by a species, and that species appears to have been reptilian in its genetic aspects. And that species actually migrated to a few bases here on Earth, which apparently still exist and are operational to this day, but at the same time were extremely aggressive and started a war over planetary resources with the civilization that lived on Mars. They decimated the Mars climate, which is obvious today. Dr. John Brandenburg, a NASA scientist, discovered vast amounts of a substance called xenon-129 all over the surface of Mars. Xenon-129 only occurs during nuclear explosions. In other words, there was a nuclear war, and it covered the entire surface. Apparently, before the demise of their planet, the Martian beings, who apparently were also sort of human-like, but not human, were able to build a superweapon. There's security in the silo. This superweapon appears to have been a planetary killer. In other words, right before their planet was destroyed, they were able to launch this planetary killer at this neighboring planet and utterly destroy it. So they destroyed the neighboring planet with this reptilian species on it, but not before their climate was completely ravaged. And what did they do? They built a couple of space arcs with what they had left. They packed on them as many of their people as they could and supplies, and they left for the only other inhabitable planet they could make it to, and that was the Earth. They landed in what today is present-day Antarctica, and they started their civilization over again. All of the rumors that you've heard, all of the sources coming out of Linda Moulton Howe, all of the aerial photographs you've seen of actual remnants of their civilization in Antarctica are there. It was discovered by the Nazis. The Nazis ended up building a base inside of one of their abandoned cities. After these Martian people landed in what today is Antarctica, and back then it was tropical. It was a beautiful place to live. But after they landed there, there was some sort of planetary catastrophe which shoved Antarctica way south and into its frozen current state. That caused a huge diaspora of these Martian-like people, these human-like Martians all around the world. These are the origin of the so-called Paracas skulls, made famous by the researcher and adventurer Brian Forrester. Paracas is in Peru. You can look it up online and see the skulls yourself. Those are the actual remnants of the Martians that made it here. They have cranial capacities which are 60% greater than a normal human being. You can change a lot of things with ritual head binding. You cannot change the cranial capacity. It means their brains were much larger than ours, and they were capable of incredible things. That's why they became deified in every place that they landed around the world. And by deified, I mean the people began to ritually headbind their children in order to look like them. You can see that very thing taking place in the bas-reliefs of Akhenaten, even the famous pharaoh in Egypt, the only one shown with elongated skulls, which really kind of gives us a time period for when this diaspora occurred. And with that, they were pyramid builders. These Martian people built pyramids on the surface of Mars, some of which are still visible today in the area known as Cydonia. And they taught humans how to build pyramids. They also had all kinds of advanced building techniques and were able to show that to local populaces. But these beings look sufficiently human enough that they it didn't really freak people out. They just had elongated skulls, but they had hair and eyes and nose and mouth, 2 legs, 2 arms. They look like a human. And that might tell us something about what seeded life in this particular area of the galaxy. It could be that all life forms in this particular area of the galaxy are all humanish in form. And that's because they would all come from a singular source if you follow the Type 3 civilization model for paranormal activity on planet Earth, which is my main theorem. So it's interesting. 3i Atlas is going to this planet that once suffered this ancient war that led to their population, the surviving members, getting on some space arcs and heading towards the Earth. And it could be that Mars is just a stop. A lot of the physicists are predicting that it could slingshot around Mars and make its way right back to the Earth. And then it's possibly just stopping by Mars for a minute, and then it's coming right to the Earth. And when it does, that's when you're going to see sort of an implosion, a popping of the bubble, like I was describing earlier. Now, the Webbot seems to think that, if there are aliens on board, it was in desperation. It's a desperation move to pack yourselves onto a ship and all your future generations and head all the way here from Sagittarius B, taking thousands of years to get here. That's a major, and still trying to make it alive. That's a low probability risk for any species that can't bend time and space like the gray aliens can that we're so familiar with. So the likelihood of a group of aliens having boarded a craft out of desperation and headed for the nearest place they could find, which would be the Earth, and still being alive when they get here is very small. The probability of their craft being piloted by artificial intelligence of some kind, the way that we understand it, is high. It could be that you end up with a craft that's artificially intelligent enough to fly even dead aliens to where their destination's supposed to be. So that's kind of what it's articulating at the moment. That won't keep the powers that be here on the planet from using that as a way of trying to keep control during an imploding of the system. And that's kind of what we're headed for, guys. So get ready, get your surfboards out, get your cosmic surfboards out, get out your bar of sex wax. We're going to wax up the boards, and we're going to hit this cosmic wave, and we're going to surf this cosmic wave all the way into the shore. What do they say on Point Break? You hit 100-foot wave, you can't just call a timeout, stroll into the beach. And that's kind of where we're at. So we're on the wave. We're going to have to surf this baby all the way in. So join me on the ride. I'll be back with you next week, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central. Stay tuned for the Vixen's Vault and the lovely Nancy Planeta next.